Printing. Applications of 3D printing, Reyn Vlietstra.
Thank you, Mr. Testmaster.
Somebody like to take over from Reyn, is it time?
I just pressed play, that's fine.
Okay, Testmasters will learn to do a lot of stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Testmaster. So, gentlemen, I had a request from one of our members, Lionel Swenson, to come and talk about what people actually do with their 3D printers. And I could have approached this in a couple of different ways, and I thought I'd approach it from a manufacturing side. So what other manufacturing processes have there been before 3D printers, and how does it sort of compare? And I'd like to hand out some things that I have 3D printed. Do you guys mind if you hand to each other and end up at that? I'll come and give you a split of this at the end. Okay, just don't put your finger in your nose or something. Okay, so my first thing is, and if you think back of things that humanity actually built and made, then the arrow is probably one of the things that you think of. We've found them in rocks and all sorts of places. And the way you make this is you just take rocks and you beat them together. It's a really simple process. It's subtractive. You take away from something. So I'd like you to have a look at this. This is very comical. I've designed it and 3D printed it. A real arrow actually doesn't look a lot like that, but I think it's close enough. With that, I have the same thing that I've printed in halfways. So it's also an arrow, but I've printed it halfway. This is so that you can have a look at how it looks on the inside. We call this infill. It's to give it some structure. So the next thing that I thought of that people made in the olden times are containers. And if you think about a container, they probably made it from clay or from grass or from something similar. So I printed this bowl. It's very modern looking. The problem with containers and 3D printing is that you end up in a situation where you want to drink or eat out of it. And the problem is that some plastics are actually toxic, and it's not necessarily waterproof. So if you want to make it waterproof, you can electroplate it or put some resin in it and coat it. But the real problem is that it's made up of layers. You'll see that now. But it's very conducive to bacterial growth. So if you eat out of this, then you might just get an upset stomach. Now, finding new material allowed us to create new processes to work the material with. And it's thought that gold would be the first metal that we actually work with, because it comes in nature in a nugget form. You can find it in streams, you can pick it up, you can hit it with a hammer, you can make it sharp and cut things with it. And metals also gave us the ability to cast and forge things. And one of the most interesting casting methods is called the lost wax casting method. And the way that works is you'll take a piece of wax and you'll carve your item out of it. It might be a ring or a pendant or whatever it might be, and you put that into a box and you fill it up with plaster. You leave a little flue there that's still connected to the item. You'll put that into a kiln or an oven of some sort, and you'll use the wax. The wax will run out and you'll be left with a mold that's made from plaster. You can then put gold or whatever you want into that. And the nice thing about 3D printers is that you can actually print that yourself now. You don't need to carve anymore, you just print the 3D part. And a lot of custom jewelry is made like that these days when it's designed from a computer. So not just for lost wax, but casting in itself gave us a lot of mass-produced tools, and one of them is the clamp. So I 3D printed a clamp here. I didn't design this myself. And I probably won't use this to clamp anything critical, like when working with machinery, but I'd like you to have a look at the thread and its hole, and I think it's a clamp. So you can actually print clamps. Even if that's not the final product, it might be the prototype. It might be the thing that you build and print before you send it for eventual casting. And the next on my list of things that Reyn developed was the lathe. And a lathe is a spinning machine, and you take your tool and you'll subtract some of your material from it. Typically wood, but you can do that with iron or anything. So I went looking for an example of something that you would make on a lathe instead of a 3D printer. And I thought a candlestick would be a good thing, and I couldn't find many of them, so I designed this and I 3D printed it. It's only after I've actually 3D printed it that I realized that it's probably a bad idea to put a candle into something plastic. So don't do this. I'd like you to have a look at the fact that it's got round things. It's possible to print round things with a 3D printer. So we invented or discovered plastic in the early 1900s. And plastic is a wonderful material. You can vacuum form it, you can mold it, turn it, cast it, join it. And a lot of respects it replaced metals for us. And you can now obviously 3D print it as well. So a lot of the 3D printing patents actually came out in the 80s. And many of them expired between 2002 and 2014. There was 225 of them expired. And that's why we've seen such an unbelievable boom in the 3D printing industry. So people like Ferrari print their piston prototypes with a metal 3D printer. And when they're happy with their prototype, they send it out for manufacturing. I think education is probably one of the biggest benefits for 3D printing. I could print a couple of things now and I could bring it to you, and I think schools might start doing things like that. It's very easy to build things and show kids. In terms of material, there's anything you can think of. People print with wood filament that you can sand, wood filament that you can stain, and then there's things with carbon fibers in them. There are clay 3D printers, there are concrete 3D printers that they use to print houses with. There's even people printing with chocolate. And some of the most heartening things I've seen people 3D print is amputees printing their own limbs. So something that fits into the limb they lost, and some of them actually have some functional parts that work with their hands and things like that. So I hope you enjoyed my quick run through what a 3D printer can do. Mr. Toastmaster.